Cool. Thanks a lot, Kickin and Steve, for getting us going. So I'm David. I'm a recovered alcoholic.
And I'm David, and I'm a recovered alcoholic.
Thanks for having us, everybody. It's great to see some familiar faces and some people we don't know. And like Steve said, 7 p.m. Central Time, 5 Pacific, Wednesday nights, David and I do the Big Book Deep Dive. Purpose of this book right here on the compendium. So if you like what we say today, join us. So we're talking about 8 and 9 today, and typically when we're going through 8 and 9, we spend about 3 hours on it. So 45 minutes, we're going to be talking fast, and of course making a few sacrifices. We can't get to everything, but we're just going to roll with it, and God's going to dictate how we flow here. So we come out of the book, as Steve pointed out. Right, this is our instruction manual. It's our textbook. So always doing step work right out of the book. So we're going to pick up on page 76. Paragraph 1, 2, 3 starts with, now we need more action. Okay, here we go. Now we need more action, without which we find that faith without works is dead. Let's look at steps 8 and 9. We have a list of all persons we have harmed and to whom we are willing to make amends. We made it when we took inventory. We subjected ourselves to a drastic self-appraisal. I'm going to stop right there. We just covered step 8, right? But guys, let's not overthink this thing. If I did step 4 correctly, I made a list based on all my resentments, based on all my fears. I put a bunch of sex harms on there. I got a pretty comprehensive list. And whether I keep those same pieces of paper and mark them up a little differently, or however you do it, technically with your sponsor, that's between, you and he or she, doesn't matter. You got that list. The only thing that I really need to add in 8 are more harms that didn't come up when I was writing those fear and sex inventories and sex harms, which are some of those things. There's plenty of people I harmed that weren't associated with sex, fear, or resentment.
Yeah, the only thing I would say to add to that is the first word in that sentence talks about now. So we just finished the 7-step prayer where we found the
Great
amen. We didn't have an amen at the end of 3. We have it at the end of 7 for a real specific reason, because 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 are connected together. So here's the amen. But in the end of the 7th step, blame game's over with. Done with the blame game. Ownership for this whole thing, right? And as David pointed out, we have our list. And then the only other thing I wanted to point out in that thing is at the bottom of that, we subjected ourselves to drastic self-appraisal. Yeah, we did. We got that list. First of all, we got that list from our first column on our 4th step, and then a drastic appraisal was the 3rd column, 4th column, and 5th column, or 4th and 3rd and 4th, however you do your sheets. But that's the drastic appraisal, and then we took those things to God in 6 and 7.
And further to David's point about now, that's a temporal reference. It's a time reference. Because think about what happens. At the end of 5, what am I supposed to do? Go home for an hour, review those first 5 steps, make sure I didn't skip anything. And if I say to my satisfaction that I did, then what happens? I do 6. Then what happens? I do 7. 3 total paragraphs on 6 and 7. So if I finish 5 and I go home for an hour, and then I spend a few more minutes, let's say a second hour on 6 and 7, then when do I move on to 8? Now, like the Smiths sang, how soon is now? It means immediate. Don't delay, don't procrastinate. Action is what gets us to God. Right? So that's 8. Very simple. Let's talk about 9. I'm going to continue this paragraph. Now we go out to our fellows and repair the damage done in the past. We attempt to sweep away the debris which is accumulated out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves. If we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes. Remember, it was agreed at the beginning we would go to any lengths for victory over alcohol.
So David started out by saying that now we go out to our fellows and repair the damage done in the past. So we know what our wrongs are in our 4th or 5th column, however you do your sheets. We attempt to sweep away the garbage, the debris, which has accumulated out of our effort to live on self-will. So our troubles are basically of our own making. Remember that in the book earlier in the book, and they because we were running the show ourselves. So that was on the bottom of page 60. And then if we have them do the will of this, then here's our prayer. We ask until it comes. Remember, we agreed at the beginning we were going to go to any lengths for victory over alcohol. Any lengths. Back on page 58 and how it works. We read it at every meeting. We talk about being willing to go to any lengths here. So the one other thing I want to talk about, and I'll try to do it briefly because as you can tell, we're under the gun. David and I have another talk right after this, is amends. Notice that the word amends here is plural. It is not singular. It does not mean apology. Amends means you amend something. Like, for instance, if I was going to amend the Constitution, I would make a change to the Constitution, right? I wouldn't apologize to the Constitution. I would make an amend the Constitution. But amends is plural. And nowhere in the book does it say amend. It says amends throughout the book. Here is the definition of amends. To do something to correct a mistake that one has made or a bad situation that one has caused. When you make amends, you go further than just saying, I'm sorry. You acknowledge your errors, wait for it, then take action to make up for what has happened in the past. So when I go make an amends to someone, I'm going to make an amends. Later in the page, I'm going to talk about making the approach, setting the appointment. But the point being is I go to make an amends to them. I tell them all my wrongs, that I feel like I harmed them. And then when I'm done with that, I ask them, were there any other harms that I may have caused you that I'm not aware of? And then I shut up for like 45 minutes and let them talk and tell me all those things that I had harmed, that I missed. Mm-hmm. And then I ask them, how can I make this right? And I shut up for another 45 minutes. And then I do those things.
David, let me cue you up one more thing. So now we're going to move into the different kinds of amends. And again, some of them might get some short shrift or might even get skipped over in the interest of time. So David, lay out the different kinds of amends for everybody. Everybody grab your pens. He's going to tell you what they are and what page they're on.
Okay. So we're going to, on page 77 is where we're going to start making our, we're going to have our definitions, our representation of what kind of amends there are. And that's going to be in the first full paragraph. So it's going to go, and those are the people that we hated or resented. And what you would like to, if you would, put down there page 77, paragraph 1, all the way to page 78, paragraph 1. And then on page 78, in the second paragraph, people and institutions we owed money to. That would be 78, second paragraph. Then we don't have to go very far, 78 on the third paragraph, incidences of criminal offenses. And that will go all the way to 79, first paragraph. And then on page 79 in the second paragraph, we'll start with a new set. It would be when others are involved. We'll describe that a little bit. We're going to have to breeze through it a little, but that goes from page 79, second paragraph, all the way down to page 80 in the third paragraph, or the fourth paragraph, I'm sorry, where others are, when others are involved. We'll explain what that means. And then domestic troubles. Anyone? Bottom of page 80, fifth paragraph, the very last two sentences there, that starts our domestic troubles. And that will go on for all the way to, sorry, I should have had this written down, all the way to 83 in the second paragraph. And then the last one is on page 83 in the third paragraph. And those were wrongs we could never fully right. And we'll explain that later too.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And
hope that wasn't too fast, guys.
No, this is being recorded. So if you couldn't keep up, Steve usually has them posted pretty quickly. All right, so we're going to go back and pick up on the bottom of 76. A really important paragraph comes right after where I stopped reading. So remember that last bit I read was, remember it was agreed at the beginning we would go to any lengths for victory over alcohol. Moving on, probably there are still some misgivings, right? Even though we made that agreement, there could be still some misgivings. As we look over the list of business acquaintances and friends we've hurt, we may feel diffident about going to some of them on a spiritual basis. let us be reassured. To some people, we need not and probably should not emphasize the spiritual feature on our first approach. We might prejudice them. So it's like, guys, we're going to use some discernment about our messaging when we go to talk to people. It's not one size fits all in how we communicate during our amends process. So we might prejudice them. Top of 77. At the moment, we're trying to put our lives in order. We are, but this is not an end in itself. Highlight this, circle it many times. Our real purpose in the ninth step and in recovery, in a macro sense, our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. Yes, we're putting our lives back in order. Yes, we're righting the wrongs of the past so we can have a clear conscience. And I want relief. This is not about my relief. This is about my recovery. And what does it mean to recover? It means everything that was wrong in my head, my heart, and my gut is getting cast aside and replaced with new ones so that I don't desire my personal relief of feeling better. What it means is that I'm putting myself in a position to be an agent of God and to spend my life helping his children. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, so back to page 76 in the fourth paragraph, the word diffident, if you want to know what a definition of that means, it just means to be hesitant or uncertain of something. And then to follow that sentence up about going to someone on a spiritual basis. So something I neglected to say prior to this. So I have my A-step list. I should take that to my sponsor. Not to edit so much. I'm not looking to edit it, but I need to go over it because, again, I'm not trying to cause more harms. What if I had an old girlfriend from 30 years ago, 40? I better get this right. I've been married over 30 years ago. That's
40 years ago.
Edit that off the tape because my wife may listen. 40 or 50 years ago. And I had an old girlfriend. I just think I'm going to pop into her life and just like knock on their door where she's happy, go lucky. Probably don't even remember me. And I'm going to make an amends to them. So I have to go over that list. And there's 3 ways to make that amends too. I can make it in person. There's other ways too. I can make it in person. I can maybe make it a phone call or maybe just a kindly letter. But I need to go over that with my sponsor. I need to have some counsel on this. Or I could go to David, one of my running buddies that I get spiritual consent to. I need not to run into this like a bull in a china shop. And that paragraph even helps us with that description. The bottom of the paragraph, page 76, fourth paragraph, last sentence, it says, to some people we need not and probably should not emphasize spiritual feature on our first approach. So that means our first approach, what did I do there? I made an appointment with that person. I didn't just show up in their lives and probably wreck a relationship. I'm not going to give any description of what that might look like because you can figure it out for yourselves. But this is about me making an appointment, being respectful of other people here. And then over to page 77, top of the page, it says, at the moment, we're trying to put our lives in order. So this is not an end in itself. That is so important to know because a lot of times in the meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, you're going to hear people say, this is a selfish program. Well, guess what? The next sentence that David's going to read to us is going to prove that statement to be a bald-faced lie. No offense, David, and the bald face.
Actually, I was going to skip down to the bottom in the interest of time.
Oh,
so if you just speak to it.
Okay, our real purpose of fit ourselves would be a maximum sentence service to God and people about us. Yeah. That is our real purpose. Oh, you mean I have purpose? Lordy, I need to have purpose. I never had any purpose coming prior to Alcoholics Anonymous and prior to even doing this work. But this is our real purpose. This is a promise. This is what needs to happen for me. The paradox of what happens after I make my amends. It just doesn't make any sense, but it's true because what David stated earlier on is I thought amends was so I made myself feel better about myself. That's not true. It's about clearing up the records of my past. Why? So that I can have a future.
So we're going to jump down to the bottom of 77 now. And this gets into how we go about making some of these amends. Go back and read the rest of the paragraph above and the one that we're skipping, right? But I'm just going to jump in here. Talks about once we're going to talk to people. Paragraph starts with, under no condition do we criticize such a person or argue. Okay, we don't get into it during this amends process. It's not a back and forth where I justify my behavior or let them know how they was wrong. No. Under no condition do we criticize such a person or argue. Simply, we tell them that we will never get over drinking until we have done our utmost to straighten out the past. And honestly, guys, there's very few times that I question direction in the big book. That's actually a line that I don't love because it feels a little self-serving to me. If you don't let me do this, I may not get over drinking. There's a lot of people who probably say, I don't really care whether or not you get over drinking. Right. One of the speakers that I revere, Joe Hawk, said that in one of his talks. And I was like, oh man, he's got something to say there. We are there to sweep off our side of the street, realizing that nothing worthwhile can be accomplished until we do so. Never trying to tell him what he should do. His faults are not discussed. We stick to our own. If our manner is calm, frank, and open, we will be gratified with the result. So what does Bill mean when he's talking about there to sweep off our side of the street? It means I'm owning what I did. I'm owning the words that I said. I'm owning the actions that I undertook. This is not about the other person, which is the other side of the street. It's strictly about me and what I did, and it has nothing to do with anything they ever did. And a little later in the paragraph, it talks about if our manner is calm, frank, and open. Okay, so if you were like me coming into recovery, your manner was not calm, frank, or open. Mine sure as heck was not. But where are we? We are here in the 9th step. We have gotten so much more spiritually fit than when we came in. So it's not just sort of direction or suggestion that says take a manner of being calm, frank, and open. This is kind of a promise too, because if I did all the work thoroughly and honestly to this point, what's being said here, the implication is that I am able to go into these situations calm, frank, and open. And that was just not possible prior to the steps to this point.
Yeah, so it starts out in that paragraph that David read, 77 second paragraph. Under no condition do we criticize such a person or argue. So that looks like a warning or a guiding principle that I don't talk about what they did. That to me is like a guiding principle. And later on in that paragraph down the bottom of the page, we are there to sweep off our side of the street, realizing nothing. And when we're hold on. And the utmost to straighten out our past. So we're trying to straighten out our past. So if I'm going to this guy, I can go to this guy and say, hey, I'm in a 12-step program. And I'm going back through my life. I can explain it in a generic terms, going back through my life. And because what I found out how dishonest I was and how full of fear that I was. And this was called an inventory. And I went through this inventory process and I need to make amends if I am going to stay sober. And whether he understands it or not doesn't really make any difference. But I also can point out that this is a life or death matter for me. But David's point is valid as all heck too. They may not care one way or the other. But the thing is what I said, I'm going to reemphasize what I said before. I'm going there to tell them what my harms were to them. And then I'm going to listen to what other harms possibly that I have done that I'm not aware of with that person. Top of page 78. Oh, another thing is very important here as we're making my approaches. Again, I really apologize that we're bouncing and skipping around a little bit, but we're so limited on time to try to get a whole 9 step in 45 minutes. It's so difficult. But what am I supposed to be doing? I'm supposed to be praying for the right time to make these amends, to come into these people's life, to make my appointment so I can have that approach with them. I need to bring God into this thing. See, this is about a practice that I have to get into. I have to be disciplined. The 10-step discipline is going to give me that thing, but this is about me bringing God into the equation all the time. So I know when the right time is to make that amends. So on the page, top of page 78, it says his faults are not discussed. So Bill's brought it up twice in the same paragraph. We stick to our own. And this is the instruction for my behavior in making a 9th step. If our manner is calm and open, this is the promise I will receive. You will be gratified with the results. It's a pretty powerful 2 little sentences there. That's it there.
We're going to skip the next paragraph. I'm just going to summarize it for you. Sometimes when we go to make an amend to someone that hated us, it says 9 times out of 10, the unexpected happens and the other person ends up making some amends to us. So go back and read that on your own. Skipping down to the next paragraph, most alcoholics owe money. Shocking. We do not dodge our creditors. telling them what we're trying to do. We make no bones about our drinking. They usually know it anyway, whether we think so or not. Nor are we afraid of disclosing our alcoholism on the theory it may cause financial harm. Approached in this way, the most ruthless creditor will sometimes surprise us. Arranging the best deal we can, we let these people know we're sorry. Our drinking has made us slow to pay. We must lose our fear of creditors no matter how far we have to go. For we're liable to drink if we're afraid to face them. So I'm going to just say one thing about this. If I owe money and I go to these creditors, the best deal I can arrange is a payment schedule. It is not a request, can I pay you 7 cents on the dollar? This money ain't mine. I must give it back. And if the person or the institution doesn't exist and there's not some other entity, the person's child, something like that, that I can give it to, like David already talked about, I go to my sponsor and say, I got this other $1,000. I can't give it back. It's literally impossible. I'll work with my sponsor to figure out where that $1,000 is going to go, a charity or something. It is not my money to keep.
Yeah. So, the joke is most alcoholics owe money. I don't know how they knew that, but I guess because this book was written by alcoholics for alcoholics. Oh, that's how they knew that. But the bottom of the page there, and David talked about, and in the book, I'm probably going to state the number wrong, but I think there's 19 times in the book that they use the word approached. As we approach newcomers, as we approach people in the 9th step here, different ways to do it. But we approach them this way. The most ruthless creditors will sometimes surprise us, arranging the best deal we can. David made a good point. But how many times have you had a sponsee that you're freshly working with, and maybe he's like 2 months sober, because you should get him through the steps rapidly, and he shows up, he owes a bunch of money to people, and he shows up a brand new pair of Jordans, right? And I'm like, dude, did you just spend that guy's money over there on your new Nikes? Because that wasn't your money. You're kidding me. I'm like, no, dude, you owe him men's and you're showing up with brand new Nikes. I'm not telling you not to buy work shoes, but did you need to buy the Nikes? Did you make all your amends? Did you clear up the records of your past? Did you pay your debtors or your credit people that you owe money to? Bottom of that paragraph there on 278.2 is, we must 129, 139. Boy, my mind is not right there on the numbers. In fact, I'm usually pretty good. But this is a very strong warning. We must lose fear of our creditors, no matter how far we have to go. For we are liable to drink if we're afraid to face them.
Warning.
Yeah, huge warning there. We must lose fear of our past, too. How many times did you walk down the street and be looking over your shoulder all the time, and you've empowered those people with all the debt that you have to them? You're always looking over. You want to get free of that? Make all your amends. It does say that in the 9th step, right? All my amends.
So continuing on, perhaps we've committed a criminal offense, which might land us in jail if it were known to the authorities. We may be short in our accounts and unable to make good. We've already admitted this in confidence to another person, but we are sure we would be imprisoned or lose our job if it were known. Maybe it's only a petty offense, such as padding the expense account. Most of us have done that sort of thing. Maybe we're divorced and have remarried, but haven't kept up the alimony to number one. She is indignant about it and has a warrant out for our arrest. That's a common form of trouble, too. If only someone speaking today here got sober and then spent some time in prison. Oh, I will yield the floor to him. Go ahead.
Okay. Here we go then. So perhaps we've committed a criminal offense and might go to jail, as David pointed out. I really need to have counsel on this, guys. I need to go to someone that has this experience. I can't just be running in there, because what if I'm married and I have kids? And I'm responsible for that, their financial means. What if I'm just going to run to somebody and say, hey, you know what, I did a stick up. I did this and that. And I did things like that. I'm not going to tell you where they're at. I'm just saying I did some bad things when I was out there drinking and drugging. And the counsel that I got from my sponsors back in the day was that I can make an amends in this way. As David said, maybe I can make a donation or some way or some form to do that kind of stuff. But in the paragraph, it says, we have already admitted this in our confidence to another person. Well, that person was my sponsor, so I can get some counseling from that person. And David and I talk about this a lot. Like giving spiritual consent to a couple people in your life that you can get the truth from, that they tell you when things are changing in your life, that you're maybe asleep, not dreaming that you're awake. and then they can point out to you. You don't get to debate it. You just get to consider what they have to say. You get to go home and pray about it. Same thing goes true with this amends here. When I owe financial amends to somebody, I can't disrupt and start harming my family just because I think I'm doing the letter of the book here. That's not necessarily true. But prayer and counsel in that order.
So then we do like a little pause and reflection on making some of these amends in the next paragraph. It's the first paragraph on 79. Although these reparations take innumerable forms, there are some general principles which we find guiding. Okay, so here's some direction. Reminding ourselves that we have decided to go to any lengths to find a spiritual experience. And let's be clear, that's the entire point of this book. That's the entire point of 12-step recovery. It's not to sit in meetings. Meetings are awesome. I love meetings. But the larger purpose is to have a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, right? So reminding ourselves, we've decided to go to any lengths to find a spiritual experience. We ask, pray, that we be given strength and direction to do the right thing, no matter what the personal consequences may be. So I'm just going to pause here for a sec. Well, now let me finish. We may lose our position or reputation or face jail, but we are willing. We have to be. We must not shrink at anything. So the point here, guys, this is about prayer, asking my higher power, asking God for direction, how to handle this. And it's what I have to do here is pray to get that willingness to go through with it. Now, David just talked about, and it's a callback to this, use some discernment. Don't pray and think you heard something from God and then rush off and do something rash where you could cause new worse harms. Yes, pray. Yes, get direction, but then please talk to your sponsor, talk to, some running buddies who know some truths about themselves as well through recovery, and figure out if what you heard is the right course of action. And just because it's the right course of action, perhaps, is it the right course of action today? Maybe it's the right course of action for next week, next month, or next year. I don't know. But do this with the reflection of the spiritual experience and become willing, even if you don't have to go through with it, right? There's a very distinct difference between the willingness to do the action and then the actual action. Go ahead, David.
All right, so right away in the third word there, it says reparation. And the way I understand it is Bill and the fellowship did not like the word reparation. That's why you see amends throughout the book. And they kind of mean the same thing. So there's guiding principles, and I haven't been pointing them out, and I apologize for that. We don't have time to go back, so please come study with us. And I study with Howard and Kathy on Sundays, and they do a wonderful job, and that's where I get a lot more information through their experience of studying this book. And the guiding principles are very important. And one of them right here in the middle of this paragraph is, and I'll start out the sentence by saying, reminding ourselves that we have decided to go to any lengths to find a spiritual experience. That is a guiding principle. And it's also the third time in the book that they mentioned to us that we're willing to go to any lengths. They did it in How It Works on page 75. We read it earlier on page 76. Now here we are in 78. So we decided to go to any lengths to find. We are seeking a spiritual experience the same way I'm seeking God in a relationship with him. How am I going to do that? Continue this process of what the next, after the comma says. This is a prayer. We ask that we be given strength and direction to do the right thing. That's a prayer. Anytime a sentence starts out by saying we ask for, no, that's a prayer. And then it says, we may lose our position, reputation, no matter what the personal consequences may be. We may lose our position or reputation. I don't know why I couldn't say that. Reputation or face jail. But we are willing. Why? Next little sentence. We have to be. There's another must. I have to be willing to do that. But again, I've got to go seek counsel. And then the last thing on that page is we not shrink at anything. So I got to be honest. And if we went forward in the book a little bit, they expound upon that. If we're going to connect dots, it's on page 146. But because we're so limited in time, I'll go back to what I said. Come study with us on Wednesday. Come study with Howard and Kathy on Sunday.
So the next couple paragraphs we're going to skip. It's about, again, using some discernment, judgment about other people and how they could be implicated in this. But if you go to the top of 80, there's a nice little short summary about going forward, right, with other people's involvement. So before taking drastic action, top of 80, before taking drastic action, so going out and saying things in the amends process, which might implicate other people, we do what? We secure their consent. That's sort of point number one here. So if we've obtained their permission, point two in this process, have consulted with others, right? Point number three in this process, ask God to help. That's point number four in this process. And the drastic step is indicated coming out of that. Again, we must not shrink. So we get sort of four conditions here that outline if the drastic step is indicated. What's the drastic step? To go say things in an amend process that will include other people. So we have to be careful about creating new harms during the amends process.
Yeah, so top of that paragraph, it says before, so that does not mean afterwards. It says before. Don't wait and run into this thing. Got to read this text really close, right? I look at things and I think, that doesn't apply to me. Taking drastic action, which might implicate other people, we secure their consent. Why would I have to do that? Because I don't have the right. I did things with my brother. I didn't have the right to implicate him in something also. I had to get his consent so I can make that amends. Because maybe you're saying to yourself, well, you're making amends for your part of it. Well, there was two of us and they knew there was two of us. And they're going to press me, the police are, and I might have to go to jail. So this is not good. I do not do that. And this is, again, I brought it up before, and it talks about it right in the next little bit. It says, if we have obtained permission, we have consulted with others. That's something I brought up before and before and before. That's what I need to do, consult with others the whole time. David made such a good point. Maybe I heard the voice of God in my head and I'm going to run out and do this. I don't know. I don't know exactly what God sounds like. Sometimes he sounds like kicking. Sometimes he sounds like Esteban. Sometimes he sounds like, I don't know.
Book tells us we're new and experienced at this whole prayer meditation.
Exactly.
So be careful, right?
The scary part is,
I'll move us along. Is that all right?
Okay, yeah, go ahead, bro.
All right, thanks. I'm just watching the clock here.
Thank you.
So the next three paragraphs on 80 is a story that sort of explains that implication to others. We're going to skip that story, and then we're going to go down to the very bottom of 80. Domestic troubles.
Mm-hmm.
The chances are that we have domestic troubles. Perhaps we are mixed up with women or men, right, in a fashion we wouldn't care to have advertised. We doubt if, in this respect, alcoholics are fundamentally much worse than other people. But drinking does complicate sex relations in the home. After a few years with an alcoholic, a wife gets worn out, resentful, and uncommunicative. I'm just going to pause there. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, so where David started on the bottom of page 80, 85th paragraph, those two little sentences, the chances are that we have domestic trouble. So perhaps we're mixed up with women in a fashion. So that's infidelity. It gives us directions for that. Wouldn't care to have been advertised. We doubt if in this respect alcoholics are fundamentally much worse than any other people, but that does not justify our behavior. But drinking does complicate sexual relationships in the home. Absolutely. Me drinking is like having an affair right underneath my wife's nose. I was in love with alcohol and drugs. But after years with an alcoholic, your wife gets worn out, resentful, and uncommunicative. Bottom of page 28, in the doctor's opinion, it looks a little bit like that to me. Irritable, restless, and discontented. I think Bill's a wordsmith, right? Comes over with a couple of different words there. And then it says, how could she be anything else? Well, absolutely. She is affected by alcoholism the same way as I am, except for I'm taking the chemical in my body. The husband begins to feel lonely, sorry for himself. That's called self-pity. The husband begins to, and then he commences to look around. I'm not going to go into that whole thing. I think we stopped there anyways, but.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's bounce to page 82. And we're going to go in the second full paragraph. Some important content to keep in mind here. So it starts with if we have no such complication, and it's talking about in the previous paragraph we didn't read about, sort of working this out together, good sense of their spouse, blah, blah, blah. Again, read it on your own. come study with us. If we have no such complication, there's plenty we should do at home, right? So if we don't have these domestic troubles, it's not hosing things up, still plenty we should do at home. Sometimes we hear an alcoholic say that the only thing he needs to do is keep sober. Bill means physically sober here. He's not talking about recovered. Important distinction. Certainly, he must keep sober, physically sober, or there will be no home if he doesn't. But he is yet a long way from making good to the wife or parents whom for years he has so shockingly treated, passing all understanding is the patience mothers and wives have had with alcoholics. Had this not been so, many of us would have had no homes today. Perhaps we would be dead. And I'm just going to read the second paragraph too, David, and we'll talk about both. To further this thought, the alcoholic is like a tornado roaring his way through the lives of others. Hearts are broken, sweet relationships are dead, affections have been uprooted, selfish and inconsiderate habits have kept the home in turmoil. We feel a man is unthinking when he says that sobriety, physical sobriety, is enough. He's like the farmer who came out of the cyclone cellar to find his home ruined. To his wife, he remarked, "Don't see anything the matter here, Ma. Ain't it grand? The wind stopped blowing." And I'm just going to soapbox for a second here, and then I'm going to let David talk about this. Guys, one of the fundamental problems that we face in recovery today, in our 12-step fellowships, be it AA or CA or any other one, at least that uses this book, is people come in because they're looking for the physical relief. They want the physical sobriety. They want the symptom to go away, so they come in and get what they need. And oftentimes they take, and they feel better and things are a little better on the outside. How about paying it back? How about paying it forward? How about getting beyond physical sobriety? How about getting recovered? Having a spiritual awakening is the result of these steps. And then what? The obligation of the 12 step to carry this message to other alcoholics, to other addicts, to other et ceteras, right? Relevant to our fellowship. I don't just come to get mine and then expect the entire world to step and fetch around me. I come, I get mine, and I give it all away. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I won't go very far with it either. You did a great job here. In that third paragraph where we're talking about the tornado, if you're looking for harms in case you don't seem to be able to find any, darn it, right there it says, hearts are broken, sweet relationships are dead. Affections have been uprooted. Selfish and inconsiderate habits have kept the home in turmoil. Well, kind of blows that theory then, doesn't it? Because they just pointed out a whole bunch of harms that I've probably done. And there's a real clever, Bill's a clever guy. Let's look and see what he did here. He says, we feel a man, if we go back to the second 82, the paragraph that David just read, and the second sentence, sometimes we hear an alcoholic say that the only thing he needs to do is keep sober. So, and then we go to that next sentence on the bottom of page 82 in the third paragraph. We feel a man is unthinking when he says that sobriety is enough. So let me make that a question. David, do you feel a man is unthinking when he says sobriety is enough? Well, sometimes we hear an alcoholic say that the only thing he needs to do is keep sober. As David pointed out, just going to meetings. My insides aren't changing. Again, why? Because this is an internal illness with an internal solution. I have to do this work if I'm going to get well. It's not about all these external things in my life. This is about change, and so is amends.
So I think we got time to make one more point and then cover the promises, and then I think we got to wrap up. So I'm going to skip most of what's on 83, as it turns out, David. Okay. We're just going to focus in on a huge line. Second paragraph, first sentence. The spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. Everything leading up to this point is based on action and moving forward. Moving forward when? Moving forward now. We are not going into a cave or wandering the forest as some sort of ascetic monk and everything is beautiful and spiritual and wonderful in our brains and in nature around us. This is a practical program of action. Yes, I am courting my spiritual experience, my spiritual awakening. But how do I do that? Through action. There is no spiritual awakening sitting on the couch in my basement in the dark. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, so that the spiritual life is not a theory is probably the most important statement in the big book at the moment of me doing this work. I need to know that right here when I'm in this moment right here. And then later on, there's a little sentence there that says, they will change in time. So they will change time. So time takes time, guys. I'm not in control of time. Time takes time. Our behavior will convince them more than our words. You want to be a verb in Alcoholics Anonymous. You do not want to be a noun. You want to be an action thing, okay? And I think I'll end it with that so we can do some ninth step observations.
Yeah, and we've skipped a lot of great stuff today.
We did.
Everything on 83. What are you going to do? I'm going to give us 5 minutes on this, and then we got to stop, David, because we got to field a couple of questions if there are any. All right, so bottom of 83. And we've heard these many times as, please read the promises, or we see them on the wall of a club, the promises, not the promises. This book is filled with promises. These are the 9th step promises, and they are great, by the way. If you're not familiar with, although I assume many of you are, page 52, the bedevilments, a wonderful definition of how we are our lives are unmanageable. They're spiritually ill. These are the opposite of it. That's what these are, spiritual promises about how our head, our heart, and our gut are going to be better. So bottom of 83, if we are painstaking about this phase of our development, what phase of our development? How about the 9th step? We will be amazed before we're halfway through. So when are we going to be amazed? Before we're halfway through, maybe 2-3 amends in. Here's a promise, guys. We're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. These are all promises, each little sentence here. We will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. The feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us, and we will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. David, get us started.
All right, because we don't have a lot of time, and Howard is a very lucky man, not just because he's married to Kathy, but also he gets to do the 10-step next week, guys. So don't miss that. That's going to be great. I love the 10-step promises. So if we're painstaking, so painstaking just means to be careful about this phase of our development, the development that we're doing. We're in the process of amends. And by the way, when I first came in at Alcoholics Anonymous, there's not a possible chance in the world that I had the power or the ability to make those amends until I did the work prior to that. I have to do all up to 9. Oh, and by the way, again, I said it before, I'll say it again, all my amends, all of them. And then as before we're halfway through what? Halfway through my amends. And then it says, we are going to know underline the word new, if you would, because this is an experience that I've never had before. This is a new freedom and a new happiness. Another experience that I've never had before. So anytime I see the word new, this is an experience I haven't had. And I continue to have those. As I grow spiritually, I will continue to have these things. And we will comprehend, understand the word serenity and know peace, no matter how far down the scale we've gone. So I don't know how to do this without going into this way too long. So, and we kind of got to move on. So I'll leave it at that, man, if you want to jump in there.
It's impossible. I'm trying to wrap up in the next minute here, right? I'll double down on what I said. Guys, these are the promises that are made to me, that are made to all of us, but are made to me as I read and study and reread and restudy this book. This is everything that I'm going to get if I'm painstaking, right? If I am honest, I tell the truth and I don't omit anything, and I am thorough. That means I do it all. If I get this, I get the new guidance in my life that comes from God. The old bad thoughts go away. The old yucky feelings go away. The old terrible prejudices in my gut go away, and they're all replaced with new ones. Dr. Yoon describes it beautifully to Roland on page 27. That is what we are truly experiencing as we start to experience these 9-step promises. Guys, thank you for our sprint through 8 and 9. Come study with us on Wednesdays. And thanks for having us to share here today.
Let me say one little sentence. At the intersection of prayer and hard work, you will find God.
Oh, that's where he's located. Thanks, guys.